Hello everyone, this video is for my critical thinking classes. We are now in the final week and we are learning about logical fallacies. I just wanted to make a video to accomplish a few things, to go over our final discussion and assignment, to remind you about the course evaluation survey, and to just thank you for your hard work and effort throughout the class. I hope this video helps you guys finish on a high note, so let's jump in. Let me go ahead and share the screen and we'll take a look at the announcement for the week. So, like I said, this is our final week of the class. Last week we learned about deductive arguments and how premises can build together to form a logical conclusion. This week we are looking at logical fallacies. So logical fallacies are arguments that are not logical, truthful, sound, valid, or have some other key flaw to them. Generally, they are arguments that sound good, but if we really stop and think about how they're working, there is something wrong with the structure of the argument itself. So our work for the week is the fallacies discussion, which runs from Wednesday the 16th, yesterday, Wednesday the 16th through Sunday the 20th. This is just going to ask you to look at a couple of videos of commercials that contain fallacies and think about how those fallacies are being used in the commercials, and also if there is like an ethical or moral dilemma to using fallacies to sell a product. Then our final assignment is the final paper fallacy assignment, which is due Sunday, the 20th by 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. So let me go ahead and first take a look at what the actual fallacy assignment is all about. Let me load this up real quick. Okay, so the first step is to find one example of a fallacy. You need to choose one of the articles below. So there's links to 3 articles here. What's the difference between Terry and Terry, the science of satire, and arrest everybody? You read through the article looking for fallacies in the argument presented by the authors. Step 2 is to label the fallacy, label what type of fallacy it is, and we will get into that more in just a minute. I've posted on the Canvas, or on Blackboard, a link of several different types of fallacies that you might be able to identify in the arguments. So you find the fallacy. You can find more than one or just one, depending on the article. You label it and kind of explain how that fallacy is working. And then you need to be sure to discuss whether or not you think that the fallacy was done intentionally by the author. Hold on a moment. Whether or not the fallacy was done intentionally by the author, as sometimes authors will, or speakers will use fallacies on purpose to try and slip ideas by an audience or by a reader that don't really make sense, but if you kind of frame it in a fallacy, it sounds good, and so people will tend to believe it. Or if the fallacy was unintentional, sometimes authors or speakers just make logical, critical thinking errors and create arguments that don't quite work. So your paper needs to be approximately 1 page long, 3 to 5 paragraphs. If we look at the rubric, it's 35 total points, 10 points for the summary of the fallacies and the explanation, and then please note it's 20 points for explaining why the fallacy was committed. Was it intentional or not? Was it there on purpose to strengthen the author's argument, to distract from part of, from some other idea, something like that, and then 5 points for writing level. So there's the prompt. Let me go ahead and show you this list of fallacies. There are many more than are listed here, and there are some in the book, and some that are in the book are listed here, or some that are here are not in the book. If you dig around online, there's a very large amount of fallacies, but the ones that I've provided here are some of the most common, and I gave kind of a brief explanation of how they work. And again, this document is available in the announcements, in one of the most recent announcements on the Blackboard. So, fallacies, like I said, are logically flawed arguments. They're generally arguments that sound good but are false. They can be used on accident, like we said, or on purpose. One of the problems with fallacies is that they're essentially lies, but they're used to persuade people. And it's weird because, going back to our discussion and the idea of looking at fallacies in commercials, we have become accustomed to fallacies in commercials. We accept them and kind of expect them in commercials. But they are still essentially lies, and in commercials, they are lies designed to remove our money from our pockets. And it's so strange that we accept them there, but if I was to use the same kind of logic to lie to you in person or in a conversation or about something more serious, we're not happy about that. So why are we happy about fallacies in advertisements? There are different types of fallacies, and I just want to go over 8 of the most common. The first one we're going to talk about is ad hominem. Ad hominem is Latin. It means to the man or to the people. And the idea is that if 2 people are debating, one side of the debate just attacks the other person, their character, their qualities, instead of their ideas. So the basic idea of this is you could be the most horrible person in the world, and if you have a good idea, you have a good idea. Just because you're a terrible person or have done terrible things in the past doesn't mean your idea isn't good. So we see this a lot in politics where politicians will attack one another instead of actually talking about the ideas that one another have. That is an ad hominem fallacy. So my example here is like insert political leader is an idiot, his plan can never work. You're arguing against him, not the plan. The second one is ad populum. It is Latin for to the people or to the masses. This fallacy basically means everyone is doing it, so it must be right. This is a logical fallacy because just because the majority of people believe something or do something doesn't make it correct or right. Pretty straightforward here. The third one is the appeal to false authority. This is when an expert or when someone is used as an expert who really isn't. So for example, celebrities are used to sell products all the time. They'll say, these are the best shoes. These are the, LeBron James is selling Sprite that makes Sprite the best soda. It's when you have somebody who is not an expert in a position where they are being set up like they're an expert or like they know best. That is an appeal to false authority. The fourth one is a circular reasoning. This is where the claim leads to the premise, but only because the premise leads to the claim. So it would be something like, I am an A student, so you can't give me a C. But the only reason that you're an A student is because I haven't given you a C. And you could sort of go around in a circle. I'm an A student, so you can't give me a C. You can't give me a C because I am an A student. Essentially, the premise relies on the conclusion, but the conclusion relies on the premise. Therefore, it is a circular reasoning fallacy. The fifth one is false dilemma. A false dilemma is when you take something that's really complex and has lots of possibilities and potential outcomes, and you shrink it down to just 2 choices. This fallacy is probably the most common one that we tell ourselves because life is complicated and there are lots and lots of possibilities to just about everything. So many possibilities that our brains can't handle them. So we shrink complex issues down to just 2 choices. And then we decide between them. We act as if those are the only 2 choices available. So examples of false dilemmas are things like either we go to war or we look like cowards. Either you get 100 on my test or you fail my class. The one my high school students are currently doing is, because they are worried about what college they're getting into, they say things like, if I don't get into Duke, my life is over. No, there's lots of other good schools and other possibilities for your life. But thinking about all those other possibilities and other schools is overwhelming. So the brains are kind of simplifying things down to 2 choices, a false dilemma. The next one is a faulty analogy. This is just when you compare things that can't really be compared. My example here is I know how to drive a car. I can definitely fly a helicopter. No, right? We make these kind of analogies a lot where we compare one thing we know to something we don't. Again, if an author does this, it might be like to compare something that the audience is familiar with to something that they're not, to kind of try and sneak it in, like you already like thing A, thing B is exactly like thing A, trust me. That is a faulty analogy. Number 7 is a hasty generalization. A hasty generalization is when you make a claim about a large group based on too small of a sample size. So for example, I know one guy who smoked cigarettes his whole life and never got cancer, therefore cigarettes don't cause cancer. One guy, not a big enough sample size. So it's like, again, you take specific evidence and apply it to a generalized audience without the evidence being a large enough pool, essentially. And then number 8 is my favorite fallacy, if that's not too weird of a thing to say. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, it is Latin for after which, therefore because of which. It's just a bad cause and effect. We do this all the time as people because we like to come up with reasons that things happen instead of things happen because life is chaotic or something like that. We like to look for reasons and we apply bad cause and effects. So my example here is because I spilled coffee on myself at breakfast, I failed my math exam. The cause does not match up with the effect. Okay, so that's pretty much, those are fallacies. You don't have to use exactly those fallacies. Again, there are different fallacies in the book and there are numerous more online if you are interested in learning more about them. The idea though is that you read one of those articles, or the idea for the assignment is that you read one of those articles and you look for the type of fallacy that is occurring in that article. And then you just kind of analyze what that fallacy is doing in the article and consider whether or not you think the author is doing it intentionally to try and kind of sneak something by, or if it is simply just a bad argument that they don't quite realize is a bad argument. That's it. Once again, the discussion runs from Wednesday to Sunday. The assignment is due Sunday night. It is a final assignment, which means there is no late work is accepted. And if you ask for the OOPS pass, I can only give you a 24-hour extension because I have to get final grades in. I think that's it. I just want to again say thank you for all your hard work in the class. And if you need anything from me, please let me know. I'm happy to help.